Long ago, before glass windows and soft hospital lights, before books of medicine were printed and rules were written about how to tell if a woman was with child, there were other ways, slower, stranger, softer, and filled with the quiet logic of people who lived by smell and color and superstition. The people of the Middle Ages did not have tests or tools, but they had eyes and patience and a world that moved slowly enough for waiting. There were midwives who whispered secrets learned from older women, and there were monks who wrote about bodies as though they were small fields filled with hidden seeds. Some believed that if a woman's urine was mixed with wine and stayed clear, she would bear a child, and if it clouded, she would not. The wine test was gentle and quiet. It needed only a cup, a moment of curiosity, and the slow settling of liquid beneath candlelight. The midwives said the smell would change, too sharp or sour if the womb was still empty. Others said to leave the urine overnight with barley and wheat. If the grains sprouted by morning, it meant the woman carried life. The idea was simple. The seed of the plant recognized the seed within the body. They thought that life called to life, and the world was full of such small calls, soft, invisible threads that joined one thing to another. And so in small, dark kitchens across villages, women placed small bowls beside their beds and watched the dawn come slowly, with a kind of trembling hope. In the quiet gray light of morning, the seeds sometimes grew, sometimes did not. No one really knew why, but they believed, because believing was the only comfort. The air was often cold, the walls damp, the floor made of earth. People lived among animals. The smell of hay, smoke, and sickness blended together in every breath, and yet they waited, watching a bowl of grain like a prayer. There were stranger tests, too. They said if a woman walked easily over rough ground, she was light and likely with child, but if she stumbled, she was empty. Others said to look into her eyes for a change of brightness, or to see if her breasts warmed near the fire more quickly than before. In some places, a small clove of garlic or onion was placed in a woman's body overnight. If the scent reached her mouth by morning, she was said to be open and fertile. If not, something was blocked or hidden. It was a strange logic, but it was their way to listen to the body through scent and air and movement. The onion test was old, older than most of the people who used it, and even the women who performed it could not tell where it began. They said it came from Greece or Egypt or from no place at all, just an idea passed from midwife to midwife like a slow echo across time. Some women found it cruel. Some found it comforting to have at least something to do while waiting in the endless uncertainty of life. The medieval world was full of such waiting. Everything took time. Crops took seasons. Bread took days. Prayers took lifetimes. And a child, if one came at all, came after months of stillness. The body was a quiet garden, and the people were gardeners without books, only the soil of their thoughts and the memory of those before them. In monasteries, men wrote about women's bodies as though they were mysteries to be solved with ink and faith. Some believed that conception depended not only on the woman, but on the alignment of stars and the balance of the humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. They said a cold womb could not conceive, and so advised warm baths and certain herbs, or even carrying small warm stones against the belly. There were lists of foods that made women fertile: sweet almonds, goat milk, honey, but also long rules about abstaining from sadness or fright, as if emotions themselves could close the gate of life. The line between spirit and body was thin then, like mist over a river. The priest said that pregnancy was a gift from God, but the healers and midwives said it was a mystery of flesh. Both might have been right in their own way. In some old manuscripts, there were descriptions of floating tests. They said if a drop of urine floated in water, the woman was pregnant. If it sank, she was not. Some said to drop it on a leaf or cloth and see how it spread. Others mixed it with vinegar or even with the milk of animals to see if it curdled. The air of the time was thick with smells: vinegar, garlic, wine, honey, smoke, everything mixed and uncertain like the knowledge they held. People did not separate science from magic. They were the same thing, two sides of the same candle flame. And so the weirdest pregnancy tests were not weird to them. They were simply what could be done in a world without glass vials or sterile gloves, where life and death were always near each other, and knowledge was a soft whisper passed through hands, not machines. Sometimes women sought help from charms or small prayers written on bits of parchment tied with red thread around the waist or arm. There were words meant to protect the child before it was even known to exist, holy words mixed with herbs and superstition. They believed that words could carry warmth into the womb the way a hearth carries heat through stone. Sometimes the charms worked, or seemed to work. Sometimes they did not, but always they gave comfort. The same kind of comfort as touching a wooden cross or whispering to the stars in the night sky. The people of that age did not expect certainty. They only hoped softly, like the flicker of a candle flame against the dark walls of a thatched cottage. As centuries passed, the strange tests spread and changed. One place used barley, another used wheat. Some said wine, others said vinegar. Some said the color of the woman's eyes would turn brighter or darker depending on the moon. Some watched the shape of her belly and said if it was high, the child was male, if low, female, though the truth was always hidden and arrived only when the cry of a new life filled the small, cold rooms beyond. Beyond pregnancy, they had many other tests, for illness, for health, for love. Some thought that dipping a piece of wool in urine and burning it could tell if a sickness was deadly. If it smoked too thickly, the soul was already halfway gone. Others used astrology to choose when to bleed a patient or when to let them eat. They thought the stars themselves pulsed through the body, a slow rhythm between heaven and flesh. And so even the strangest pregnancy tests were part of this larger dreamlike system, a way of listening to the invisible, the way one might listen to the wind for rain or the creak of wood for age. Every object was a sign, every sign a kind of soft voice whispering something about the body beneath the layers of wool and linen. Sometimes they boiled urine to see if it thickened into strange shapes. If it did, they said a child was growing. If it stayed thin, they said the womb was cold and barren. The smell of boiled urine filled small rooms and mixed with the scent of herbs, rosemary, sage, pennyroyal, mint. Herbs were everywhere in that world, hanging from beams, crushed into salves, stirred into broths. People trusted plants the way we trust machines today. The midwives knew their language. They could look at a leaf and see warmth or coolness in its veins. They could look at a woman's skin and know if her blood was too thick or too pale. Their science was touch and sight and smell and waiting. Long waiting, always waiting. Time itself was medicine. The body would tell its truth eventually if one just waited and listened. Sometimes people did not want to wait, so they visited wise women who read the future in eggs or bread dough. Some cracked an egg into a bowl of water and said the shapes of the white would tell if a child was coming. Others baked small cakes with urine inside to see how they rose. Strange acts, but done with care and hope, in kitchens where light fell through narrow windows and dust turned in the beams like tiny spirits of air. There were also fears that evil forces could stop conception, witches, demons, or curses, and so many women carried small relics, pieces of bone or metal, crosses, or even tiny bags of salt for protection. Everything was connected in their minds: body, soul, air, earth, heaven. Nothing stood alone. So when a woman wondered if she carried life, she was not just asking about herself, but about the world. If the balance of things was right, if God or nature or chance had smiled upon her that season. The world was slower then, slower in thought and motion. The fields lay wide and quiet. The bells rang across valleys. The rivers moved as they always had. The tests were small things, human things, moments of trying to see the invisible with what little they had. Some wrote the results in small books or passed them along by word of mouth to daughters who would